All right, very good. So we're going to move on into the next session, which, as you can see, is strategy and best practices exchange around policy, planning, zoning, installation of charging infrastructure, community engagement, all of those different pieces, both I think on the fleet transition side, but also what you're doing out in your community to really encourage the adoption of EV. And so we have a few objectives here, and most of this is very true to kind of this whole format and SSDN's general peer-to-peer learning work, is that we really want to hear from you all. This is meant to be a discussion hour and really idea generation, sharing best practices as we've already been doing, what's worked, and really, even more importantly, what has not worked for you all, because I think that's some of the best places we can learn some lessons in all of this. So we want to get feedback about strategies, best practices, and then a few folks we'd love to highlight a little bit and just call out some of your specific experiences. So we've kind of prepped that a little bit. But I think one of the things we'd like to end up taking away from all of this is, where are your primary interest points that you'd love to do a deeper dive, where we can then engage with SACE and the monthly meetings, or in SSDN and the EV working group meetings. Does that make sense? So this is really kind of an entrance into, we can do a further deep dive on the things that you all select. So I think what I would like to do, we've got a few different folks that I'd like to hear from, but thinking about some of the policy pieces, I know some of you, many of you from Florida here had been working on kind of EV policy pieces that unfortunately had a challenging, well, we'll just say preemption, right? But a conflict with the state level. But I'm interested if any of you that had experience with that could start to share a little bit of your story, not about the preemption piece and that challenge as much as really the work you went into to developing that EV policy. And wondering if anyone might be willing to share. I know maybe Orlando, other folks in Orange County.
Cassie.
Yep, Cassie.
Hold on. I mean, I want to throw it. But.
Hi, Cassie Cordova with the City of Clearwater. So we were actually approached from our planning department because they wanted to go ahead with this EV requirement for new building, new construction and or large renovations. So luckily our planning department is a really good ally for us. So they did most of the heavy lifting where they started drafting it all. They did ask us if we had any data that we could give them, and maybe Melody, I don't remember where we got, but we had some, I think it was probably from the SSDN listserv, but we had a couple of, I think we had one that was Florida specific and one that was either nationwide or Southeast, talking about, like how many EV ready spaces, and it was percentage based. So we said EV ready, installed, and whatever the third one is. And then we had to kind of help them define the terms. And, we wanted to try to be at the high end, was basically how we were going to propose it. So we were going to go with the most progressive and try and get it passed, and then if they wanted to negotiate us down. So we had it all ready to go, and then of course it got preempted and we didn't do it. But we spent a fair amount of time on it, and the planning really spent a lot of time on it. So yeah, that was our experience.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, we've got a few more hands.
I'm going to steal a point of privilege and tell you that, because I haven't said this to Mike yet, I stole all of Orlando's information for the City of Mobile's EV plan. So thank you, and now you may.
And here's Mike.
Sure. We actually had a EV ready ordinance. It was in the code, and we've actually had multiple developers that had to follow it when they were developing their new buildings, but then it got preempted. I can say, like anything we do in City of Orlando, like one of the core values of our mayor is collaboration and community engagement. So that was, like, we built that code by engaging with our residents, by engaging with our local developers that would, be building out a lot of that infrastructure. So it was community led, like the community wanted to do it. And I'm not trying to be political here, whether you're left or right. Basically, democracy has been stopped. Like, our residents, our community wanted that ordinance, and now it's been preempted. So I'll just say we are big believers in home rule at the City of Orlando, and so that's something we're really trying to advocate for, so that policies that people want aren't taken away.
Thank you. Can you share just a follow-up here? What kinds of things were you hearing from your community in terms, you say they're a big driver here, but like what was their interest in all of this? Where did that come from?
Yeah, we have so many community engagement sessions. It's hard to remember every little thing. But I mean, we've been doing community engagement around sustainability since 2007 when Mayor Dyer started our GreenWorks initiative. So we're constantly hearing from our residents about moving towards 100% clean energy and minimizing air pollution. So it's just, we hear lots of stories every year as we're talking with our residents.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready to chuck this thing across the room, or?
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. So in Coral Gables, we passed our EV ready ordinance in our original one in 2019, and then I have 3 elected officials that drive EVs, so they were continuing to push us, and similar to what Cassie was saying, we worked with our planning and zoning, and we updated our EV ready ordinance in 2022, and we set very progressive thresholds. We set 5% EV installed for any development that's off-street that's 10 or more parking spaces. We did 5% EV installed, we did 15% EV ready, 20% EV capable, and our city manager at the time was an engineer. He said, well, let's do 60, the rest of the building needs to be sleeved, so it can go 100% if needed. And we got input from our developer, our local developers as well, and they were on board with it. But again, similar story to the rest of us, that has now been preempted. So we are encouraging it, but obviously can't enforce it. And we had 3 or 4 developments that went through the process since 2022.
So minimum number of sites per development. Educate me a little bit here on the words ready versus.
So EV installed, obviously you have the infrastructure day one.
ready.
Was you had everything sleeve basically without everything but the charging station.
So it's conduit and cable and all.
Correct, yes.
But then what was the other one?
Capable.
Capable. What is
which
that?
is the capacity in
The power grid.
Yeah, you have
Got
the
it.
capacity in the electrical panel and everything to come back later on and make it. And then sleeves was just you had the penetrations available in the structure to then go back. To in the future go back and because that's really expensive, obviously, to go back and do that.
Yep.
So we wanted to make sure that the buildings were, and not only were we asking our private developers to do that, we've done that in our parking garages that we've built that apply to the same standard. So one of our newest parking garages, we had held to the same standard as well.
Okay, cool.
Excuse me? They had some concerns about capacity, but in the end, they didn't push back. They didn't push back too hard. But again, right now we can't enforce it. So
Yeah. The other thing I'd be interested in as well, I think, you might be able. Well, there you go. I would also be interested in knowing, like a few years ago, I remember Georgia Power, I'm in Georgia, and so they were giving us recommendations. I think it was like 1% of total parking spaces now, and then planning for 5% to be capable and ready. I don't even know if that, you all are much more in tune with the real everyday today, so I'm curious if that has shifted at all too, but go ahead.
We, I'll just share, and kudos to Coral Gables. They were like ahead of the curve on their requirements. But in Miami-Dade County, we had a requirement for 20% EV ready. So they had to install, 20% of spaces had to install the make-ready infrastructure. But I wanted to also share that Miami-Dade County was integral in getting these amendments into the Florida Building Code as appendices.
Into the which code?
The Florida Building Code as appendices. There were 2 appendices added. One was for the 20% make-ready infrastructure, and the other one was more for the EV capable for single-family residences that at least like the panel had to be upgraded to a point where it could support like a level 2 charger at a single-family home. And because of the preemption, local governments weren't able to then adopt those into their code. So I just wanted to share that I think that there's a lot of advocacy that could be done, like if there's a goal to improve the preemption, I guess you could say, that maybe there's an avenue there for these Florida Building Code amendments to maybe just let local governments adopt those. They've already been incorporated there into the Florida Building Code. Yeah, they're still there. It's just local governments have to adopt them by local ordinance in order to make them effective within their jurisdiction. I'll just share, a couple of years ago, there was an amendment in state law. I'm not a lawyer, but it effectively said that like we can't put something in our zoning code that would otherwise be regulated in our electrical code. So I know that at least our attorneys had some consternation about us having some of those requirements in our zoning code after that went into effect. So I'll just share that broadly.
Cool, thank you. I think we had oh.
Christina, you ready?
So close. Interception.
Well, that was embarrassing. So I'm with the city of Pompano Beach, and we never got to the point of, having an EV code, but we do have a sustainability design guideline for new development, major site plans. So we're in the process right now of updating that. So we have a little bit of a workaround that maybe I can share with you guys.
Yes, please.
So it's so we basically will have 100 points, and it's choose your sustainability, right? And one of the options is, EV chargers. So technically, we're kind of going around the preemption, so you can pick that depending on what you get. We use Coral Gables to assess the number of points. Thank you, Coral Gable, as usual. So you'll get the maximum points if you have a charger. I think maybe up to 30 points of the 100 points. So that's a way for us to say, well, it's your choice to put. We're not requiring that. But this is a way for your building to have EV chargers and not to go against the preemption.
Very good.
Wait, so those 100 points they have to get is required?
Yes, for new development of major site plans.
And that's policy?
Yes, for major site plans, yes.
Or guideline, practice? It is a policy?
But this hasn't gone to commission yet. We're revamping it.
Okay.
So hopefully by April, it will go to commission.
That would slide under the preemption piece
Yes.
and still be able to keep moving. Okay, cool. Heather. Nice handoff.
Heather Bullock, Charlotte. So we do have, we actually have our EV charging installation ordinance as a part of our greater Unified Development Ordinance that we just recently passed as a part of our 2040 comprehensive plan. So, it wasn't the start of the show, which might have helped. But we absolutely met with developers, with our planning team, like together. We would meet with them, listen to their concerns. I would say at first we did have EV Ready, but we ended up taking the EV Ready out because I'm sorry, I get confused too, the EV capable versus ready. But basically the one that has pull strings and everything ready to go. I think that's EV Ready, right? Okay. And so we pulled that because, we didn't want to have, we talked with the utility about it and just having stranded assets potentially. We didn't want to do that, but we did want them to have the space to put the transformers, to put the panels and so, and that we mirror that in our sustainable facilities policy for our buildings and our, so we did meet with them a lot. So far, so good. We haven't been preempted. I almost don't want to tell people because I don't want that to happen. And we also have, and I think kind of similarly to what you're talking about, we have a bonus structure. So we have a sustainable bonus. So, and they can choose what they want to do. We did like higher percentages in EV charging infrastructure installation, so they could choose that. They could also choose LEED certification or other green building certification of their buildings. So there's like several different things that they could choose, and then that gives them bonus points, and those bonus points then allow them to do additional height or space. So.
Cool. Heather, hold on to that for a second, because I actually have another question for you.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, and this is to the group, but have any of you done kind of streamlined permitting process just as an additional carrot to help in the private implementation of that?
So we're actually working on that right now. That's in our proposed budget for this year, is to have, because we have really worked hard to work together on all of our plans across the city. So, comprehensive plan, strategic mobility plan, our tree canopy plan, like we're trying to integrate everything together. So we are, and so that was one of the things that ULI, Urban Land Institute, we had a I don't know what to call it, a charrette with them that, and that was one of the biggest things that they said was to provide the streamlined permitting. That's something that we can do. And so we're really working hard to make that happen. Yeah.
Okay, great. Anyone who's implemented, go ahead.
I just have a question for you. Is that called charging smart? Is that the same thing we're talking about? I just wanted to quickly add, I recently learned about Charging Smart program. They just had a webinar like a day ago, and I can share with Dory. And I think it's something that we can do right now. It's expedited, streamlined EV charging permit, which they do have a funding available until mid-2027, and it's not frozen or anything like that. So I'll pass the information to Dory, and maybe we can share it to everybody who's interested.
That would be great. And if anyone else has a question or a comment, feel free to catch the catch box. But we also have a Menti that Dory just mentioned, and it's on, I believe, this exact topic, right, Dory? Well, not too different. So great. 10 of you actually have that already in place. Quick show of hands, who is that? Who said yes? This question, jurisdictions that have a streamlined permitting process. So look around the room. Those are folks who have it. You can talk to them. For all of the 15 folks who are either working on it or don't have it. All right. I want to also think about, well, are there other kind of zoning or other planning issues? Oh, do we have another Menti? So if permitting is not streamlined, what does the EV charging permit process tend to look like? All right, so several of you said the combo, so you've got multiple permitting pieces, and then some are just an electrical permit. And we have one more Mentimeter, I believe, yes? Two more. So I believe the question is going to change on your phone if you still have that up, so go ahead and do the next one, which is, what departments review EV charging station permits? So different departments: building department, development services, building, fire, engineering, planning, utility, public works, permitting, community development. I like that one. Was not one I was initially thinking about. Okay, cool. I think we got a few repeats here. So, and then moving on to the next question. Does the process vary at all for level 1, level 2, or fast charger? No, it should. Yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more from who said no, it should, or anyone who aligns and agrees with that. Or not. I guess I'm thinking about, well, what would be the additional pieces as you increase your power to these different locations and sites, what would be the additional review process that you think would be needed, or how would the consideration be different from level 1 to DC fast charger? Okay. Oh. Load capacity? Yep. All right. Dory, do we have any other Mentimeter questions for this? No. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you all for doing that. And just so you know, that is all information we're still gathering for the broader mission here of what topics do we want to start doing more of a deep dive on. I want to shift it a little bit here and talk about more of the planning process and thinking about citywide studies. And I see our friend Glenn Hadwin is in here from Fort Lauderdale. So Glenn, I would love for you to just speak generally to some of your experience with that. And let's get you Casey's going to do a
Ready?
bomb. Oh! Saved Stacy. Well done. Well done, Glenn. Stacy, we got to work on that arm. All right. Or Casey.
Sure. One of the things, when I went to an SSDN conference, I think 2 years back in 2023, and some of our friends I'm going to get it wrong, in the Carolinas had done a study looking at suitability for EV charging across the state, their municipality. And so we took what the study they had done and tried to figure out how to apply that to our city, looking at parameters like where do we have chargers now, also factoring in equity considerations, where are our underserved or low-income communities, and with that we developed a weighted matrix, and we haven't actually applied it yet, but the intention, this was done as we were thinking about the CFI and whether we're going to apply, and we ended up not applying, but it's still something we're holding on because we are hopefully in a month adopting a net zero plan, which will include advancing EV charging. That'll certainly be one of the things we'll try to use to guide our efforts going into the future.
Great.
Yeah.
So I have a policy background, and I started in the municipal work always thinking, you know what, we're just going to get the council to approve this policy, right? And then we'll have that foundation to stand on. And of course, if they've all approved it and their records are all showing that they've approved it, that somehow that'll mean that they will fund the actual work that needs to occur. And I'm curious from that standpoint, in the plan development, I mean, those of you who have really started to build out these plans, where you all land on that? I mean, do some of you really have the backup of the governing elected officials to fund this work, or are they still kind of pushing back and saying, well, we approved it, now it's your job to figure it out? Carrie,
I'm not throwing it. I'm done. I'm done with that personally. No more throwing for me.
So good morning. So within our sustainability and resilience action plan, we have fleet electrification. And this plan was accepted, keyword there, accepted, not necessarily approved, but accepted by our Board of County Commissioners. And so we have a very aggressive goal for our light duty fleet transition. So we have about 1,400 light duty fleet vehicles. I emphasize the light duty because heavy duty gives people heartburn. I'm like, no, we're just looking at light duty. And that still causes heartburn. But anyway, to basically transition our entire light duty fleet to alternative fuels. So basically electric and hybrids also do count. And to do that all by 2030, so in 5 years at this point. So aggressive timeline, and there wasn't necessarily like a new budget funded to go with that. So that's where we are right now, of basically kind of assessing our current inventory, assessing the infrastructure needs. So it was great to learn about the EVI locate. Wish I had known about that a few months earlier. And so now we're in the third stage of like, how do we do this rollout? And so there's a very strong potential that, we bring it back to the board, even though it's an accepted plan, but bring it back to say, look, these are the different kind of like scenarios and different costs associated with that. We need your guidance on which of these would be your preferred rollout method. So we're in the thick of things right now.
Yes, it sounds like it. I think we had a question in the back. Thanks, Gary.
Okay, so yes, we have 5 commissioners, and they are split. And so when one commissioner from one political party has an idea, or they're happy, or they agree to our plan to outfit our county with electric vehicles, then another commissioner from another opposing party decides to not agree with that. So that's always a challenge. I have one commissioner that's going to say no, no matter what I say. I have one that doesn't want to spend any money. So I have to work really hard at keeping 3 of them happy, so that, because we need 3 votes, in order to get things pushed through. So it does work. We have been successful. Our fleet manager, his name is Al. He is amazing. I'm so grateful to have him, because we're always on the same page. But it can be challenging, especially when there are factors at play that have nothing to do with getting electric vehicles. They're just arguing with each other.
Yep. If you say yes, they're going to say no. That's just how it works, right?
Yeah, I'll touch just on the public EV chargers. Our city council definitely supports us, but to be transparent, our staff, I think, made some mistakes a few years ago and actually underestimated the ongoing costs of a public charging network. So we've had to kind of meet in the middle over the past year. So I think a few folks earlier were talking about bringing some of that maintenance in-house. That's something we've done. So we've, to try to make it work with the budget, we've gotten a little bit higher budget, but it still wasn't enough based on the way we were maintaining our charging network. We actually started with an agreement with our utility to maintain all our chargers, and we were probably paying 2 or 3 times what we pay now to do it internally, because they weren't actually doing the work. They were then hiring a vendor, so they were just charging a markup. The vendor was then buying equipment, putting their sticker on it, and adding a markup.
Of course,
so we now, buy a lot of our equipment directly from, just a wholesale electrical distribution company. We use our on-call electricians to do all the work, and so we've significantly trimmed our budget, but it's actually still higher than we anticipated, and we just kind of met in the middle with our elected officials and our budgeting team. So make sure you round up when you're trying to estimate your ongoing costs, particularly in low-income neighborhoods, because the usage is still not quite there yet. It goes up a little bit every year. Our hope is, as more and more used EVs hit the market, that the usage will go up, and that'll actually help some of our financial losses.
Yeah, I like that nuance as well, and that's good to bring up. Heather, I saw your hand.
So we had our electrification efforts were a part of our greater climate action plan. So when our city council passed our strategic energy action plan, that goal was one of the main ones. And so although at the time, back in 2019, they stressed strive for zero carbon fleet by 2030. And they also said, there was a strong emphasis on trying to figure out within the existing budget. I think over time, because we kept, as probably many of you know, you have to do a lot of marketing in this role. That was something I had to get used to. That felt weird to me, but that is super important to keep eyes on you, to say look at what we're doing, look at this is amazing, finding innovative projects so that it's interesting, and our city council is interested and is excited about what we're doing and continues to support. And eventually, you know, we were able to get an annual budget. We were like, is this gonna continue for a while? And then now it's almost like, yeah, this is our budget. Like, we're absolutely gonna keep on having this, and it's just sort of been a process to like get to where we are now.
Yep. Oh. Oh.
All right, so y'all remember I told y'all how big Jacksonville is? We have 19 city council members and a strong mayor form of government. And to add a layer of interestingness, we have the first female Democratic mayor, and first Democratic mayor in like 30 years. However, we only have 5 Democrats on city council. So it's an interesting dynamic there. So how it works in Jacksonville, you can plan all you want, but it has to be adopted by city council to become like a part of policy or ordinance. However, when it comes to fleet electrification, I've been able to build relationships and go from, like, the mayor wants all EVs, but maneuvering different departments and the thoughts about EVs, I've been able to get an EV pilot approved because there's no budget cost, so it's cost neutral. So the EVs happen to be the same price or cheaper than the ICE vehicles, so I've been able to look for light-duty opportunities that I don't have to necessarily put up a fight to pass a plan. We're still working on the plan, but just trying to see if I can get some easy wins and get a pilot in. So I don't know if anybody else is maneuvering that space of just political complicatedness. I definitely recommend a pilot to start.
Yep, that's a magic word sometimes. The pilot project. Can we just do a pilot project for 25 years? So speaking to the funding, the installation of the charging infrastructure and the vehicles themselves, curious how you all have approached that when you might have a policy that supports it, but you don't necessarily have, I mean, it's still kind of an unfunded mandate, right? So you're still trying to figure out how to actually implement. I'm curious, different ideas or approaches you all have used to try and move the needle on installation and implementation. I'm thinking of charging as a service, or next session we're going to be talking about engagement with utilities, if there are utility programs that you all have engaged with to help soften the blow of the upfront cost, or ongoing maintenance, either one.
Alana Irwin, City of Boynton Beach. It's actually funny that you're bringing this up because last week at our commission agenda review, we had this discussion about EV infrastructure. And we're pretty behind as far as getting the infrastructure in place. I just did some mapping and found out that in a city that is 16.5 square miles, so it's not too small, but it's not too large. And I found out that we have 19 charging locations between public and private with 54 total ports. So we're very behind. We have no infrastructure, for lack of a better word. So our commission, I actually brought the Charging Smart letter of intent. So we're actually going to be on board with working with Charging Smart to get some kind of plan in place. And it actually sparked a very interesting discussion with our commission because they wanted EV infrastructure yesterday. And they want a framework for revenue generation. And they have a lot of locations that they have in mind, but I think there's a desire, but there's a lack of data on our part. So how we're trying to implement this is we're hoping to at least, once we get on board with Charging Smart, which they adopted on Tuesday, fortunately. So I'll be sending that letter once I get the resolution signed. And we're hoping that we can use kind of that framework and their technical assistance to help create a plan so we can ultimately build out a program that we can use as revenue generation, like which areas will require level 2, like are people going to be there for a few hours and can they charge with level 2? Do we need DC fast chargers at like our city hall if people are just coming in and out? Those are some things that we're hoping to consider because we've partnered with the FPL Evolution program. That's where most of our charging comes from right now. And we're having a lot of issues with charge point. I think most of us are having problems, trying to get the infrastructure fixed because of, supply, whatever issues are a problem. And we're finding that the chargers are pretty much always broken. So we want to have
Are always what? Sorry.
broken. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So we want to have our own infrastructure. We want our own staff that can repair them. We have a team of electricians. We have a team of facility maintenance crews that can learn that. So we're in the very early stages, but we're hoping to kind of take that momentum from our elected officials and our community to build a framework that really makes sense for our community for the future of EV.
Cool. Yeah, we got a few other.
We're kind of doing the same thing, Rick Longabart, City Raleigh. I don't know if I need to announce that again anymore. So because of our e-visor inflation strategy rollout, we marked out exactly what we're going to need over the course of the next 10 years. So that's kind of that's our Bible, so to speak. So anytime we ask for money, we reference the e-visor report and study that has all those total cost of ownership and all the great stuff and pictures and graphs that no one ever reads. So we always reference that, but we're putting in our CIP budget for the next 5 years for $2 million a year for the next 5 years. Not knowing what future holds, we wanted to be a little more conservative of not asking for 10 years because we're fluid, right? We grow, things change, the landscape changes, so it's really hard to predict what you're going to build in 10 years from now. So, but we also have thought about, because the chargers are really commodities if you look at it, right? It's like a gallon of gasoline. So fortunate for us, our software can charge back to our customers much like an equivalency of gasoline. So there's revenue for the energy part of it. And then we're thinking about building in the charge for the vehicle itself. So every time you replace a vehicle, we capture, 5,000, 6,000 per vehicle. We have 5,000 vehicles, so you do the math. So we're actually charging it back to the customers, which is internally city users, right? So we're looking at embedding it into the equipment replacement cost to start building seed money.
Oh, nice. Okay, so part of the chargeback to the departments for the use. Okay. As Casey is walking by, this is a little bit, just another creative, innovative funding source I've heard about. And a shout out to Athens, Clark County in Georgia, and Andrew Saunders and a few other folks, Mike Wharton, if you know them. But with Georgia Power and their electric utility, we have a franchise fee. I don't know if that's the same here in Florida or other places where, they pay you back a certain amount for contracting with the utility. And they essentially locked in with council, okay, here's our franchise fee, X number of $1 million that we got this year. We're going to lock in with council. That will now stay a permanent number. And as energy prices go up, the franchise fee goes up and what the city receives. And so they're now taking off the top of that franchise fee and investing that in green, sustainable, resilient projects. So innovative ways to do it. And I think every local government's a little bit different with their process. But go ahead.
Good morning, I'm Dan Zhu from Gainesville. So happy to share that we adopted our resiliency plan in January.
Congratulations.
And as part of that plan, we have a transportation electrification plan. And along with that, we also adopted the zero transit emission plan. So in the plan that we lay out all the fundings and budget and able to let us get to 80% zero or low emission transit fleet by 2045. So the funding mostly from FTA and also from various of department and also the auctions if the car is too old. And we also recently received $26.4 million from FTA, which will allowing us to get 19 hybrid buses and also solar canopy for the employee parking lot, which will help to charge those buses. And currently in our fleet, we have 118 buses. 4 of those are 100% electric buses, and some of them are hybrid. And we are in the process to getting 2 more hybrid buses. So that's current status. And for the light duty vehicles for the city fleet, we are actually ahead of our goal. And we have a set of goals for 2025, 2030, 2035, and 2045. We've been progressing so far so good there. If we can implement the CFI grant, that would be amazing.
Yes.
Hi. I just just got an article from the Washington Post. The Trump administration has halted EV charging programs throughout the highways. I just got it from the Washington
Is that
Post.
yeah, the NEVI. Yeah, I think that just came out today, this morning.
10 hours ago.
What's that?
10 hours ago.
Oh, 10 hours ago, sorry, okay. Yeah, y'all, I mean, this is no joke, right? I think it only underscores the importance of the conversations like this and the work that we're all doing here together to share best practices, innovative different ways of doing the work. And, you know, in the sustainability and resilience field, we are not strangers to this anyway. In local government, you're not strangers to this, right? You're always got somebody else, some other entity that's controlling purse strings or policy direction. And so having to deal with that in the middle of trying to meet your goals, continue to work, you know, the mission critical pieces of your sustainability resilience fleet offices. Thank you for sharing that, though. Appreciate it.
Just wanted to share where we are, City of Key West. We have our procurement process starts for our EV bus. Our first EV electric bus cost us about $1.2 million. And for the charging infrastructure, and that does not include like preparing and implementing the actual charger itself. It's about $100,000 for that. But the good thing is that we had 2 grants for it, so it's all been paid for and things are in process. We had to wait about 2 years for it, and we're super excited. So that's it's coming up soon. And we have 2 hybrid buses for city fleet. And besides that, we have set aside $100,000 for our very first EV and fleet clean transportation plan. And 2 weeks ago, we just welcomed our sustainable transportation planner, who is right here, joined us 2 weeks ago, Ray. So we're super excited and looking forward for things are rolling. And we definitely want to increase EV charging stations around the island. And one thought that we had is to enroll EVs in our energy savings performance contract.
Yep.
Yes.
Thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. So we just signed a contract with our owner's representative, and we are starting with the OR first, and then getting them to review our RFP to bring an ESCO on board, just so that we are more prepared and we have like an expert rep that we could work with to ensure that guaranteed savings that are promised are not going to have the shortfalls that it may. It's a complex process. So we're thinking while we're getting our energy audits and energy efficiency retrofits done, we also want to enroll our EVs within our energy savings performance contract.
Yeah.
So just wanted to share that that's one way to not rely on federal grants or monies that are not certain, and we're not certain whether they'll be available or not. So we're leaning towards the ESPC approach.
Yeah, so another approach to implementation is seeing if you can find energy savings in your energy savings performance contracts, which are complex beasts, I know, but that could help fund some of the installation and adoption of EVs at some of your facilities.
Yeah, so one other thing that I'm working on, and I know I've heard it at a previous, like a SSDN conference. So I'm working on getting a sustainability fund created within the city. So there is some movement on solar. Solar is a little bit more bipartisan sometimes. So trying to see if I could get, savings from energy savings from solar, or eventually from the EVs, and, getting the tax credit. So we would have spent the money. So if I can get that into a sustainability fund to be reinvested, I'm working on getting that together. So, but on the public side, I can't stress enough the power of leadership and partnerships. So there is a lot of conversation about if government should play a role in installing public chargers and if that affects the market and so on and so forth. So I've been really taking the approach to try to coalitionize with the hospitality industry and different tourist locations that people with EVs are, people come to Florida for tourism. So if I can encourage them to install chargers, or if I can find a way to incentivize that within some of our existing tourists and arts and culture funding and initiatives, I think that goes a long way. So we're just working on, just thinking about working with our independent agencies as well as our hotels, our hospitals, to see if they could put money within their budget or make it a priority to install public chargers too, so it's just not on me trying to figure out how to use public dollars to get it done.
Thank you, Ashante. I'm going to flag that we've got about 5 minutes left in this session, and one thing that we didn't get to as much as I was hoping to, but I think that's okay, is on the community engagement side. I mean, I know that's a big component, but I'm even more specifically interested, and I'm curious, maybe we can do a last little tabletop discussion as we go here, but how you engage with under-resourced or underserved communities in that or neighborhoods in that community engagement. I mean, we just heard that sometimes they're not used as much in some of these underserved communities, and so then there's additional maintenance challenges and use challenges you've got with that. But in lieu of having folks speak on that, just to keep us on time, what I would like to do, I'm going to ask one of my sidekicks, Ann Livingston. She's going to pass around very custom-made cards, just hot off the press this morning from my markers and index cards. Each table is going to get a pin and one of these cards, and I mentioned at the beginning, this is all about how do we use this as a place setting for further discussion and deeper dive. So we've got a lot of different categories. Each card is the same at every table. Just, if you would, each individual kind of mark down your top 3, no more than 3 areas where you'd really like to consider more. Or if you don't have, you can use your 3 in any category you want. So if you want to put all 3 in one topic, that's fine. We're just trying to get a better sense of where you all might have most interest in deeper dive conversation. And feel free to discuss on that and just kind of chat the last little bit. But if you could all do that, and then we'll collect those at the top of the hour.